There comes a moment in every person's life when everything they've counted on disappears. The friends you thought would be there forever suddenly become silent. The family you believed would support you through anything turns their back. The partner you gave your heart to walks away. The job that defined you is gone. The money you thought would secure your future vanishes. And you stand there, alone, with nothing but the clothes on your back and the breath in your lungs. But let me tell you something profound that most people never understand until they reach this sacred place. This moment, this exact moment when you have no one but God, is not your ending. It's your beginning. You see, we spend our entire lives building up dependencies. We become dependent on people's approval, on their validation, on their presence in our lives. We lean on circumstances, on money, on status, on titles, on possessions. We create these elaborate support systems that we convince ourselves are essential to our survival. And we never realize that all of these things, every single one of them, is temporary. They're like shadows that appear solid until you try to grab them, and your hand passes right through. But here's what happens when everything falls away. When there's no one to call, no one to lean on, no safety net beneath you. When your phone stops ringing and your inbox is empty, and you realize that all those people who said they'd be there forever have moved on with their lives, something remarkable begins to stir inside you. Something that was always there but got buried under layers and layers of external noise and distraction. It's your connection to the source of all creation. It's your direct line to the infinite intelligence that brought you into this world and sustains every beat of your heart. Most people run from this solitude. They panic. They desperately try to fill the void with anything they can find. New relationships, substances, endless distractions, television, social media, shopping, eating, anything to avoid sitting alone with themselves and facing that empty space. Because they think the empty space is the problem. They think being alone means being abandoned, being worthless, being unlovable. But they couldn't be more wrong. When you have no one but God, you're not alone. You're finally home. You're finally in the one place where real transformation can occur. Because as long as you're dependent on external things for your sense of peace, for your sense of worth, for your sense of security, you're a slave. You're a prisoner to circumstances beyond your control. You're constantly anxious, constantly worried about losing what you have or not getting what you want. Your happiness rises and falls like a boat on stormy seas, tossed by every wave of change. But when you lose everything, when it all gets stripped away and you're standing there with nothing, you have a choice. You can curse the darkness, or you can finally see the light that was always there but got obscured by all your stuff, all your attachments, all your dependencies. And that light, that eternal flame that burns within you, is your connection to the divine. It's the part of you that was never born and will never die. It's the consciousness that observes your thoughts, that experiences your experiences, that remains unchanging while everything around you changes. Let me share something with you. Every great spiritual teacher who ever walked this earth went through a period of absolute aloneness. They went into the desert, into the mountains, into the wilderness, away from society, away from comfort, away from all external support. And there, in that solitude, they found what they were looking for all along. They found that they were never separate from God. They found that the kingdom of heaven was within them. They found that they had access to infinite wisdom, infinite strength, infinite love, not from outside sources, but from the source itself that flows through them. You might be thinking, that's all very nice, but how does this help me pay my bills? How does this help me with my loneliness? How does this solve my practical problems? And here's where most people miss the entire point. When you align yourself with the source, when you tap into that infinite power within you, your outer world begins to reorganize itself. Not because you're manipulating it or controlling it, but because you're finally flowing with life instead of against it. Think about a river. When you're trying to swim upstream, fighting the current, depending on your own limited strength, you exhaust yourself and make very little progress. But when you surrender to the current, when you align yourself with the flow, suddenly you're carried effortlessly. Doors that were closed begin to open. Opportunities that you couldn't see before appear. People who are meant to be in your life show up at exactly the right time. Solutions to problems that seemed impossible become obvious. But none of this can happen until you let go, until you stop clinging, until you stop demanding that life look a certain way. When you have no one but God, You're being given the greatest gift imaginable. You're being given the opportunity to learn what real faith is. Not faith as an intellectual concept, not faith as something you talk about on Sunday mornings, but faith as a lived experience. Faith that says, even though I can't see the path ahead, even though every logical part of my mind is screaming in fear, I trust that I'm being guided. I trust that I'm being supported. I trust that everything is working for my highest good, even when it doesn't look like it. And here's what's beautiful. When you develop this kind of faith, this unshakable trust in the invisible support system of the universe, you become unstoppable. Not because you're forcing things to happen, but because you're in harmony with the creative force that moves all of life. You stop being a victim of circumstances and start being a conscious creator. You realize that your thoughts have power, that your beliefs shape your reality, that what you focus on expands. But you can't learn this lesson as long as you have backup plans. As long as you have people to rescue you, money to fall back on, comfortable distractions to numb yourself with, you'll keep operating from the old paradigm, the paradigm that says security comes from external things, that your worth is determined by what others think of you, that you need to control everything to be safe. And that paradigm is exhausting. It's a recipe for anxiety, depression, and chronic dissatisfaction. When everything falls away and you're stripped down to nothing, you're forced to confront the fundamental questions of existence. Who am I really? What is my purpose? What matters? And these aren't abstract philosophical questions. They're intensely practical. Because when you know who you are at your core, when you understand your true nature as a spiritual being having a human experience, you stop being affected by the temporary ups and downs of life. You develop an inner stability that can't be shaken by external circumstances. Let me tell you about the nature of God, the nature of this infinite intelligence that you're connecting with when you have no one else. It's not some bearded man in the sky judging your every move. It's not separate from you, up there while you're down here. It's the very essence of what you are. It's the life force that animates your body. It's the awareness that's reading these words right now. It's closer to you than your own breath. And it's infinitely abundant, infinitely loving, infinitely creative. When you tap into this source, you realize that lack is an illusion. Poverty is an illusion. Limitation is an illusion. Not because these things don't appear real in the physical world, but because they're not the ultimate truth. The ultimate truth is that you're connected to an infinite supply of everything you need. Not just material things, but love, wisdom, creativity, energy, peace, joy. Everything you've been seeking outside yourself is already within you, waiting to be accessed. But here's the catch. You can't access it from a place of desperation. You can't access it from a place of fear. You can't access it while you're still clinging to old patterns, old beliefs, old ways of being. You have to let go. You have to surrender. You have to trust. And that's terrifying for the ego, for the part of you that thinks it's in control, that thinks it knows what's best, that thinks it can figure everything out with its limited human mind. When you have no one but God, your ego is dying, and it fights back. It throws up all kinds of resistance. It tells you you're crazy for trusting something you can't see. It reminds you of every time you've been disappointed, every time things didn't work out, every time you were let down. It creates worst-case scenarios in your mind and convinces you they're inevitable. It keeps you stuck in fear, in doubt, in worry. But if you can sit with that discomfort, if you can allow the ego to have its tantrum without believing it, without acting on it, something shifts. The noise begins to quiet down. And in that silence, you hear the still, small voice within. The voice that's always been there, guiding you, loving you, supporting you. The voice that knows the way even when you don't. The voice that says, "Be still and know that I am God." This is not passive resignation. This is not sitting around waiting for some external force to save you. This is active faith. This is conscious co-creation. This is understanding that you're not separate from the creative power of the universe. You're an expression of it. And when you align your will with the will of the source, miracles become commonplace. Not miracles in the sense of violating natural law, but miracles in the sense of natural law, working for you instead of against you. You start to notice synchronicities. You think of someone and they call. You need information, and you randomly open a book to the exact page that has your answer. You're worried about money and an unexpected check arrives in the mail. You're looking for guidance, and you overhear a conversation that gives you exactly what you need. These aren't coincidences. These are confirmations that you're connected, that you're being supported, that you're not doing this alone. And as your faith grows stronger, as your connection becomes more conscious, you stop feeling like a victim of life and start feeling like a participant in a grand unfolding. You realize that everything that's happened to you, every loss, every disappointment, every heartbreak, was preparing you for this moment. It was stripping away the false to reveal the real. It was removing the obstacles to your awareness of love's presence, which is there all the time. When you have no one but God, you learn to love yourself. Not in a narcissistic way, but in a recognition of the divine within you. You stop looking for validation from others because you validate yourself. You stop waiting for permission to be happy because you give yourself permission. You stop postponing your joy until circumstances change because you find joy in the present moment, regardless of circumstances. This doesn't mean you become detached or cold or uncaring. In fact, the opposite happens. When you're connected to the source, you become more loving, more compassionate, more generous. But it comes from overflow, not from depletion. You're not giving to others hoping they'll give back to you. You're not being kind because you want something in return. You're simply expressing your true nature, which is love. And here's something most people don't understand. When you stop needing people, they start showing up in your life in healthier ways. When you stop being desperate for connection, you attract genuine connections. When you stop trying to control how others behave, you start attracting people who are aligned with your values. But it all starts with that period of aloneness, that sacred time when you had no one but God. Because in that solitude, you learn to stand on your own 2 feet spiritually. You learn that your peace doesn't depend on anyone or anything external. You learn that you can be happy regardless of circumstances. You learn that you have everything you need within you. And from that place of wholeness, of completeness, you relate to others as a whole person, not as a needy person looking for someone to complete you. Let me talk about fear for a moment. Because when you have no one but God, fear is going to show up. It's going to be loud and insistent. It's going to tell you that you can't make it on your own, that you need others, that you're going to fail, that you're going to end up homeless or alone or miserable. And here's what you need to understand about fear. It's not real. It's a projection of the mind into an imaginary future that doesn't exist. The only thing that's real is this present moment. Right now, in this moment, are you okay? Right now, do you have air to breathe? Right now, is your heart beating? Right now, are you alive? Yes. So fear is a liar. It's your ego trying to protect you from imaginary threats. And the way you overcome fear is not by fighting it, not by trying to get rid of it, but by acknowledging it and then choosing to trust anyway. You say, yes, I feel the fear, and I'm going to act in faith regardless. Every time you do this, every time you feel the fear and trust anyway, you build your faith muscles. You prove to yourself that you can handle uncertainty. You demonstrate that you don't need to know how everything is going to work out to take the next step. And gradually, the fear loses its power over you. It becomes like background noise that you barely notice because you're so focused on following your inner guidance. When you have no one but God, you also learn the power of prayer. But not prayer as begging or pleading with an external deity. Prayer as alignment, prayer as conversation. Prayer as listening. You start to pray without ceasing, not by constantly reciting words, but by maintaining a constant awareness of your connection to the source. You walk through life in a prayerful state, knowing that you're always in the presence of the divine, that you're always being guided, that you're always being loved. And from this place of prayerful awareness, you start to see miracles everywhere. You see God in a sunset, in a child's laughter, in the smile of a stranger, in the perfect timing of events. You realize that the whole universe is conspiring to support you, that there are no accidents, that everything is meaningful if you have eyes to see it. But here's what you have to give up to live this way. You have to give up your attachment to outcomes. You have to. Give up your need to have things look a certain way. You have to give up your timeline for how and when things should happen. You have to give up your limited human ideas about what's possible and impossible. You have to surrender your will to the higher will, trusting that the higher will knows what you need better than you do. This is where most people struggle. They want the benefits of spiritual connection, but they want to stay in control. They want God to be their servant, fulfilling their requests, making their lives comfortable and easy. But that's not how it works. God is not a vending machine where you put in your prayers and get out your desires. God is the intelligence that's orchestrating all of creation, and your job is to align with that intelligence, not to command it. When you truly have no one but God, you become humble, not the false humility that says you're worthless or inadequate, but the real humility that recognizes you're part of something much bigger than yourself. You're a wave in the ocean, and while you have your individual expression, you're not separate from the ocean. And when you recognize this, when you stop trying to be the ocean and accept that you're a wave, you relax. You let the ocean carry you. You trust its currents. You flow with its rhythms. And from this place of relaxation, of surrender, of trust, your life begins to work in ways it never worked before. Not because you're trying harder, but because you're trying less. You're allowing instead of forcing. You're receiving instead of grasping. You're being guided instead of struggling. And life becomes easier, lighter, more joyful. But let me be clear about something. This doesn't mean you become passive. It doesn't mean you sit around doing nothing waiting for good things to happen. When you're connected to the source, you're inspired to action. But it's inspired action, not desperate action. It's action that comes from intuition, from inner guidance, from following the gentle nudges of the universe. And this kind of action is always effective because it's aligned with the flow of life. You start to understand that your job is not to figure out the how. Your job is to be clear on the what and the why, and then let the universe handle the how. You set your intention, you align your energy, you take the next obvious step, and then you get out of the way. You don't micromanage the process. You don't try to control every detail. You trust that if it's meant to be, the path will unfold. And if it's not meant to be, something better is coming. When you have no one but God, you also learn to be comfortable with being different. Because the truth is, most people are living from ego, from fear, from separation consciousness. They're caught up in the rat race, trying to accumulate more, achieve more, prove more. They're comparing themselves to others, competing, judging, criticizing. And when you step out of that game, when you start living from a place of inner connection and trust, you're going to look weird to them. People are going to think you're lazy because you're not stressed out all the time. They're going to think you're irresponsible because you're not worried about the future. They're going to think you're naive because you trust that things will work out. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be willing to be misunderstood. You have to be willing to walk your own path even when everyone else is going in a different direction. This is where many people give up. They start to connect with the source, they start to experience peace and clarity, and then the people around them criticize or mock or reject them, and they go back to the old way of living just to fit in, just to be accepted. But you can't serve two masters. You can't live from ego consciousness and spiritual consciousness at the same time. You have to choose, and when you truly have no one but God, you've already made your choice. You've chosen truth over approval. You've chosen peace over popularity. You've chosen alignment over achievement. And this choice, this fundamental orientation of your life toward the divine rather than the material, changes everything. It changes how you spend your time, how you earn your money, how you treat other people, how you talk to yourself, what you value, what you pursue, what you let go of. And yes, there will be times when you doubt. There will be times when you wonder if you made a mistake. There will be times when it looks like everyone else is succeeding while you're struggling. But appearances are deceiving. The people who look successful on the outside are often miserable on the inside. They've achieved everything the world told them to achieve and found it empty. They've climbed the ladder only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. But you, when you have no one but God, you're building on a foundation that can't be shaken. You're investing in things that can't be taken away. You're developing qualities that will serve you not just in this life but eternally. You're learning to be a conduit for love, for peace, for wisdom, for healing, and these things are far more valuable than any amount of money or status or recognition. Let me tell you something about provision. When you're aligned with the source, you're always provided for. Not always in the way you expect, not always according to your timeline, but always in the way that's best for you. Sometimes the provision is financial. Money shows up exactly when you need it. Sometimes the provision is relational. The right person appears at the right time. Sometimes the provision is informational. You get the insight or idea or solution you were looking for. Sometimes the provision is internal. You receive the peace or strength or courage to deal with what you're facing. But here's the key. You can't manipulate this. You can't fake faith to get results. The universe knows the difference between genuine trust and strategic calculation. When you're truly surrendered, you're not constantly checking to see if it's working. You're not keeping score. You're not living with one foot in trust and one foot in fear. You're all in. You've burned your boats. You've committed to this path of faith regardless of outcomes. And when you live this way, fully committed, fully surrendered, fully trusting, you become a magnet for miracles. You become a channel through which the divine can work in the world. You become an instrument of peace, a bearer of light, a source of blessing to everyone you encounter. Not because you're special or superior, but because you've gotten yourself out of the way. You've stopped blocking the flow with your ego, with your fear, with your limited thinking. When you have no one but God, you realize that you never needed anyone else in the first place. Not because people aren't wonderful and valuable, but because everything you were seeking from them you already had within you. You wanted them to make you feel loved, but you are love. You wanted them to make you feel worthy, but you are worthy by virtue of being alive. You wanted them to give you security, but real security comes from knowing you're eternally connected to the source of all creation. And once you realize this, once you get this truth at a cellular level, you're free from neediness, free from codependency, free from the exhausting work of trying to manage other people's perceptions of you, free to be authentically yourself, free to express your gifts, free to follow your calling, free to live the life you were born to live. This is what happens when a man, when a woman, when any person has no one but God. They find everything. They find themselves. They find their purpose. They find their power. They find their peace. They find that what they were searching for in all the wrong places was inside them all along, waiting patiently to be recognized. So if you're in that place right now, if everything has fallen away and you feel like you're standing on the edge of an abyss with nothing to hold on to, let me tell you what's really happening. You're not falling. You're being lifted. You're not losing. You're being freed. You're not being abandoned. You're being invited into the most intimate relationship possible, a relationship with the divine essence that is your true nature. And this relationship, this connection, this union is what you were always meant to experience. Everything else, all the other relationships, all the achievements, all the possessions, they were just preparation for this moment. They were training wheels that had to come off so you could learn to ride on your own, or more accurately, so you could learn that you were never riding on your own, that you were always being carried by a love so vast, so infinite, so unconditional, that your human mind can't fully comprehend it. But you can feel it. In the silence, in the stillness, in the moments when you stop struggling and just breathe and allow and trust, you can feel it. It's there, always has been, always will be, waiting for you to remember, waiting for you to return, waiting for you to come home to yourself, to your source, to your God. And when you do, when you finally let go and let God, you'll look back on this time of having no one and you'll see it for what it really was. Not a curse, but a blessing. Not a punishment, but a gift. Not an ending, but a beginning. The beginning of your real life, the life you were always meant to live. The life of freedom and peace and joy and love that flows from being connected to something greater than yourself, something that was never separate from you, something that you are and have always been. This is the truth that will set you free. Not the truth you read in a book or hear in a sermon, but the truth you live, the truth you experience, the truth you become. When you have no one but God, you have everything. And once you know this, really know this, not just intellectually, but in every cell of your being, you can never go back to the old way of living. You can never again believe the lies that you're alone, that you're not enough, that you need something or someone outside yourself to be complete. You are complete. You are whole. You are connected. You are loved. You are supported. You are guided. You are provided for. Always have been. Always will be. And now, finally, you know it. Not because someone told you, but because you've experienced it. You've walked through the fire and discovered you can't be burned. You've descended into the darkness and found the light within. You've lost everything and found what can never be lost. This is your inheritance. This is your birthright. This is who you really are beneath all the layers of conditioning and fear and false belief. You are a spiritual being, infinite and eternal, having a temporary human experience. And when you remember this, when You live from this truth. When you align with this reality, everything changes. Not because the world changes, but because you change. And when you change, your experience of the world changes. So stand firm in this knowing. Rest in this truth. Trust this process. You're exactly where you need to be. Everything is unfolding perfectly. And even though you may have no one in the physical sense, you have everything in the spiritual sense. You have the one thing that matters. You have God. You have the source. You have the infinite creative intelligence that formed galaxies and set stars in motion and brought you into being for a purpose that only you can fulfill. Walk in that purpose. Live from that connection. Be that love. And watch as your life transforms from the inside out, as doors open that you didn't even know existed, as provisions appear that exceed your expectations, as peace floods your being regardless of circumstances, as joy becomes your natural state, as you become a living example of what's possible when you surrender to the divine flow. This is your time. This is your moment. This is your opportunity to break free from every limitation, every fear, every false belief that's held you back. The fact that you have no one but God is not a tragedy. It's a liberation. It's an invitation. It's a sacred opportunity to step into your true power, your real identity, your divine nature. Take it. Trust it. Live it. And you will never be the same.